The laminated badge on my chest read, Ivy Tran, Event Assistant, Logistics Team. Not co-founder, not partner, just someone to make sure the projector worked and the coffee didn't run out. The Future Founders National Startup Competition was the kind of stage I used to dream of presenting on. Now I was standing behind it, checking clipboard rows and counting how many bottles of water were left for Panel B. I straightened my sleeves as my brother, Nathan, stepped onto the main stage. Lights hit his face like he was born in their glow. "Ladies and gentlemen," he boomed, "welcome to a gathering of the country's brightest minds. Today we witness innovation. Today we celebrate legacy." He didn't look at me once. I was 5 feet from him, behind the curtain, adjusting a broken mic stand for one of the teams. We hadn't spoken directly in over 3 years. He used to call me the dreamer. Not as a compliment, more like a warning. "You're wasting your time with your strange ideas, Ivy," he once said. "You're not built for this world. You belong in coffee shops, not boardrooms." Back then I believed him. Now I was in the boardrooms, just not the ones with my last name on the door. "Hey, logistics," someone called. I turned. A volunteer waved a tangled HDMI cable. "This one's not working. Panel C needs backup." I took it from her and smiled. They didn't know, no one here knew, that the woman chasing extension cords down hallway carpets was also the silent force funding 2 of the finalists standing on that very stage. That Helix Capital, the quiet venture firm backing disruptive first-time founders, was mine. Entirely mine. My phone buzzed. "Incoming, Helix Capital Ops. Stage ready, final transfer scheduled, waiting on your go." I slid the phone back into my coat. "Not yet. Let them keep looking through me a little longer. Sometimes, the quietest one in the room holds the loudest surprise. And tonight, I wasn't here to make noise. I was here to sign the future." The first team on stage was NeuroPatch, a biotech startup led by 2 exhausted grad students from Wisconsin. They were nervous. One of them dropped the remote before their pitch even began. The audience shifted uncomfortably. One judge raised an eyebrow. "Wearable brain-computer interface to regulate PTSD symptoms in real time," the girl stammered. I knew this pitch, word for word. I had reviewed it 6 months ago when their application was rejected by every accelerator they applied to. Too young, too clumsy, too not polished enough. But I had read beyond the nervous grammar. I saw the numbers. The pattern recognition model embedded in their sensors was months ahead of what large firms were touting, so I funded them. Not publicly, of course, through Helix Capital. Through the fund no one connected to me, the fund with no names, just results. Now here they were, standing on the very stage that once told them no. And suddenly, the applause was loud. Funny how approval works when you're holding a mic. The second team, SolarWeave, a rural energy startup founded by a stay-at-home dad and a high school robotics teacher. Nathan once scoffed at their proposal during our family dinner. "Nobody's going to care about fabric that stores solar energy unless it's wrapped around a Tesla." He was wrong, because that fabric had just secured testing deals in 3 African nations, and their prototype scarf powered an entire tablet for 6 hours in full sun. I remembered meeting the founder in a cafe at 7:30 a.m. before his day job started. He didn't even have a pitch deck, just a stained notebook and hope, so I backed him. Now the judges leaned in, nodding. The stage adored what they had once ignored. I stood quietly behind the curtain, watching these teams beam under the lights. No one knew that the real battle had already been fought. In empty parking lots, in Zoom calls with laggy Wi-Fi, in rejection letters and silent bank accounts. No one knew that the woman behind the clipboard was the one who helped them keep going. When the room was dark, when the applause hadn't arrived yet, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Helix Capital. "Standing by for live announcement. Press kit approved. Proceed." I didn't answer. Not yet. Let them keep clapping for a little longer, believing they built this night. I wasn't here to interrupt. I was here to remind. Nathan returned to the stage with that signature smile, the one I used to believe meant warmth. Now I knew better. It meant ownership. Of attention, of space, of credit. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, voice full of pride. "It is our great honor to announce this year's official funding partner, the investor who believes in early innovation, who supports our brightest founders." I stepped slightly forward behind the curtain, just enough to see the MC whispering something to him, eyes darting to the side screen. He froze for half a second, then recovered. "We'd like to thank Helix Capital for making tonight's investment awards possible. Ivy Tran, founder Helix Capital." And as I sat down, this time not as an assistant, not as an afterthought, I felt it clearly. Not pride, not revenge, but a rival. The kind that doesn't need confetti or confessions. Just a chair finally labeled correctly. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is sit exactly where you were told you didn't belong, and make that space undeniable. The restaurant was quiet in that overly curated way, where every fork was too polished, every candle too still, and the silence between courses said more than anyone dared to. My mother had insisted. "A family dinner," she texted, "just us. Just to talk, let's be civil." Civil, that word always sounded like a warning when she used it. I arrived last. Nathan and my parents were already seated. A table for 4. 3 menus open. 1 folded and untouched. I slid into the empty chair. No one stood to greet me. No one even said hello. My father cleared his throat like he was preparing to give a shareholder address. "So," he began, eyes fixed on the wine list, "Helix Capital." I smiled politely. "Yes, that's what they call it." Nathan didn't look up. "You blindsided us." I leaned forward, elbows off the table, posture perfect. "I gave you 10 years to see me. You blinked." The waiter approached. My mother waved him off. "Just water, please." Of course, because everything had to be controlled, even hydration. She finally spoke. "We just didn't know, Ivy. You could have told us, you could have prepared us." "Prepared you? Like how you prepared me to be invisible?" I didn't say that out loud. Not yet. Instead, I unfolded my napkin slowly. "You remember when I pitched my first venture idea at 22? The data-empathy hybrid model." My father grunted. "The emotion algorithm nonsense." "Right," I nodded. "Nonsense. Until Goldman Sachs called it transformative last quarter." Nathan laughed under his breath. Always so dramatic. I turned to him, calmly. "You remember when you told me I should stick to journaling and yoga instead of wasting time in boardrooms?" He shrugged. I was trying to help. "No," I said. "You were trying to make sure the room stayed small enough to fit only your ego." Silence. Then my mother's voice, quiet, wavering, but still laced with that practiced elegance. "We never meant to hurt you, Ivy." And here it came, the soft plea. I placed both palms flat on the table, not in anger, in truth. "I'm not here to argue, I'm not here to gloat. I'm here because you asked me to dinner." Nathan scoffed. "You think you're better than us now?" "No," I said, meeting his eyes. "I think I was never less than you, and that's what you never learned to accept." The waiter returned, this time with water. Still no one touched their glasses. "I'm not asking for an apology," I added. "That's overdue and unnecessary." My father finally looked at me, really looked. "Then what do you want?" I considered the question, then replied, "For you to stop calling what I built a surprise." It was, you just weren't paying attention. None of them spoke, because deep down they knew. This wasn't about funding, or stage time, or even reputation. It was about the quiet, steady hum of someone building value behind their backs, while they were too busy clinking glasses over their own reflection. When the bill came, I reached for it. My father moved faster. "I've got it." I looked at him, then, gently, "Don't worry. Helix invested in this restaurant Series A last year. Tonight S on me either way." And with that, I stood up. No anger, no farewell speech, just the truth. Sometimes closure isn't loud. Sometimes it's just one final seat at the table where you realize you no longer need to be fed, because you've already learned to cook empires. The view from my corner office wasn't glamorous. Just rooftops, fire escapes, and a sliver of the river if you squinted hard enough. But it was mine. No hand-me-downs, no family crest on the glass. Just clean lines and earned silence. It was almost 7 p.m. Most of the Helix Capital team had gone home. The lights were dimmed, and the city outside was turning orange and gray. Then, a knock. Not an email. Not a calendar request. Just a soft, tentative knock on the frosted glass. "Come in," I said. The door creaked open, and in stepped a girl who looked no older than 22. Oversized backpack, scuffed sneakers, and eyes that flickered between hope and hesitation. She held a folder to her chest like it might collapse if she breathed too hard. "Hi," she said. I'm sorry to show up without an appointment." I closed my laptop. "You're not interrupting." She hesitated, then, "My name is Mia. I'm a third year at Eastlake. I was at the startup competition last week. I watched your speech 3 times since." I smiled gently. That explains the nervous energy. Mia exhaled, suddenly vulnerable. "I don't have pedigree, or pitch decks, or fancy anything, but I have an idea, and I've been working on it for 2 years in my dorm. Everyone I talk to says it's too niche, too impractical, too early, but..." She looked up, eyes steady. "You were the first person I've ever seen who made me believe that too early doesn't mean wrong." I leaned back, a flicker of memory hit me. A younger version of myself, standing outside boardrooms, clutching a folder, trying to shrink her own ambition just to be allowed inside. "I brought the prototype," Mia said quickly, placing the folder on my desk. I didn't look at it yet. Instead, I asked, "What do you want from me, Mia?" She hesitated, then sat straight. "Not a check, not a shortcut. Just 10 minutes. Just one honest opinion. I figured if anyone knows how to build from silence, it's you." I looked at the folder, then at her, then nodded. "Okay," I said. "Tell me what no one else is listening to." And just like that, another door opened. Not for me. This time, I was the one sitting on the other side of the table. And that table, it was longer than anyone in my family had ever built. Because success means nothing if you don't leave the door unlocked behind you. Sometimes the most radical thing a woman can do is knock. Sometimes the most powerful thing another woman can do is open it. It had been 4 months since the competition. 3 months since Mia's prototype turned from a sketch to a living demo. 2 months since we signed her pre-seed funding agreement, not because I felt generous, but because her vision was sharper than most Series A founders I'd met. And now, here she was again, standing at the edge of my office, holding 2 lattes and a tablet filled with graphs she probably hadn't slept reviewing. "I brought the good stuff," she said, placing the cup down. "Triple shot, no sugar, like your interviews say." I chuckled. "You stalk all your investors this thoroughly." "Only the ones who changed my life." We reviewed her milestones, benchmarks, the next pitch she'd be giving at the regional conference. It was all solid, but more than that, it was hers. She wasn't mimicking anyone. She wasn't asking for permission. She was building on her own terms. And for the first time in a long while, I saw in someone else what I had nearly extinguished in myself years ago, conviction without applause. As she packed up her tablet, she paused. "Can I ask you something? Personal?" I nodded. "When you made it, really made it, did you ever wish you could go back? You know, do it with your family, have them be proud." My answer came quicker than I expected. "No," I said, "I don't need them to clap anymore. I just wish they had listened when I was still whispering." She nodded, quiet. "I think my dad's starting to hear me now," she said. "He sent me a podcast about women in tech last week. First time he's ever tried." I smiled. That's more than most get. As Mia left, she turned at the door. "People keep asking me who I model myself after, who I want to become." She hesitated, but I just want to become someone who lets the next girl not need to ask that question. I didn't answer, because legacy isn't a job title, it's a ripple, and I had just seen it hit the next shore. That night, I stayed late. Not to work, not to catch up. Just to sit in the quiet office, looking out over a city full of windows that once refused to open. I thought of the rooms that once asked me to leave, of the chairs that were never pulled out for me, of the dinner tables where I was served silence between the courses of their success. And I thought, maybe they were right to push me out, because if I had stayed small enough to fit in their frame, I would have never built a wall big enough for others to climb. I reached for my notebook, the old one, the same one I started Helix with. I turned to the back and scribbled a line. The greatest things we build aren't for ourselves. Then I closed it because this chapter was finished, and the next, it belonged to someone else now. Polite applause, some murmurs. A few executives in the front row nodded, pretending they'd heard the name before. Nathan cleared his throat, scanning the audience. And now, would a representative from Helix Capital kindly join us on stage to present the $2 million investment prize to our winner? Silence. I took one step forward, another, then. The doors at the back of the ballroom swung open. I walked the length of the aisle, past polished shoes and patent leather clutches, past the media row and VIP tables where my family sat. I didn't hurry. Let them recognize me. Let them blink twice. Let them wonder why the logistics girl had just been handed a microphone. Nathan's smile twisted as I climbed the steps. "Ivy," he said under his breath, "what are you doing?" I didn't answer. I turned to the crowd and spoke into the mic, calm, steady. "My name is Ivy Tran, founder and sole managing partner of Helix Capital." Gasps, a camera flash. Then another. Phones lifted. "I started this fund 4 years ago," I continued, "after being told by my own family that I was too idealistic to understand real business. Tonight, I'm honored to invest $2 million into the very future this competition almost overlooked." The room changed temperature. My father, sitting at table 1, slowly lowered his glass. My mother's mouth formed a perfect, the kind of shape she usually used to say obscene. Nathan's face was somewhere between fury and panic. "Wait," he said, reaching for the mic, but I stepped away. This wasn't his announcement to finish. A spotlight moved, not on Nathan, on me. And suddenly, the girl with the clipboard wasn't the assistant, she was the authority. I stood at the podium, but I wasn't shaking. Not like the first time I pitched an idea and was told to be more realistic. Not like when I watched my own family clap for strangers, but avoid eye contact with me at dinner. Not like when I signed the founding papers of Helix Capital, alone, at a borrowed desk, in a one-bedroom apartment with a leaky ceiling. No. Tonight, I wasn't afraid. Tonight, I was visible. Helix Capital, I said clearly, was built to serve the overlooked, the underestimated, the ones who were told they were polished enough, experienced enough, or connected enough to matter. I looked toward the back of the room, where the SolarWeave team was standing in stunned silence. "And yet," I continued, "those are the founders changing the world." Soft applause broke out, hesitant but sincere. I believe in ideas before they trend. I believe in talent before it's packaged. And I believe in rooms where power doesn't sit in the center, but walks in quietly through the service hallway, carrying cables. Nathan was frozen. He opened his mouth, then closed it. There were no counterarguments when the headlines were already updating. Helix Capital revealed, Ivy Tran behind $200 million fund backing top startups. Co-founder's sister steals spotlight with surprise announcement. Underestimated no more. Ivy Tran's rise to tech powerhouse. My mother reached for my father's hand. He didn't move. They weren't used to seeing me like this. Truth is, they'd never seen me at all. The moderator hesitated before speaking. "Tran, would you like to present the investment award?" I nodded and took the envelope from his hand. "My pleasure." The screen behind me lit up, not with Nathan's name, not with the company logo. With mine. Ivy Tran, founder Helix Capital, a name they couldn't dismiss anymore. When I called up the winning team, the same 2 students Nathan had called nervous undergrads during the semifinals, they looked at me like I was holding the universe. I handed them the oversized check. "You built something that matters," I said to them privately, just loud enough for the front row to hear. "Don't let anyone tell you your voice needs polishing. It's already clear." The room applauded again, louder now. Because applause, like respect, can shift when truth walks in wearing its own name tag. And I wasn't wearing theirs anymore. The ceremony blurred after that, handshakes, flashes, people suddenly remembering they had once believed in me. I stood for photos with the winners. I gave an impromptu interview to a local station. My voice was calm, my answers sharp, but my eyes kept drifting to the front row, table 1, where my father still sat, unmoving, where my mother dabbed at the corner of her eyes, unsure whether it was pride or panic that welled up, where Nathan stared down at his phone, probably checking stock prices, press coverage, anything but me. That used to sting. Now I realized something liberating. I had stopped waiting for their applause a long time ago. A woman from the organizing team rushed over, breathless. "Ms. Tran, would you like to join the VIP panel in the breakout room upstairs? We'd be honored to have your voice in the debrief." I paused, then smiled. "Yes, but I'll need a chair with my name on it this time." Her cheeks flushed. "Of course, we'll have it arranged immediately." I walked slowly toward the private elevator, the one I wasn't allowed near last year when I attended as a guest, S+1. Back then, they said the room was at capacity. Back then, they asked me to wait in the hallway. I waited. Then I built my own building. As the elevator doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of Nathan, still sitting, still frozen. He looked like someone trying to remember how the script was supposed to go, how he had imagined this night. He'd make the big speech, the family would be praised, he'd cement his image as visionary leader. But the story had changed narrators, and I didn't need his stage anymore. Upstairs, the breakout room buzzed with CEOs, investors, government tech advisors. The moderator glanced up as I entered. "Oh, Ms. Tran, we didn't know if you'd." "I'm here," I said simply. They cleared a seat, right at the center of the table. A nameplate was waiting, freshly printed, still warm from the press.